World War One. Now let's jump into it, guys. Now you may be wondering, how did World War One affect nations? Here are some examples. World War One caused the downfall of the German, Austria-Hungarian, Turkish, and Russian monarchies. Also, World War One marked the end of colonialism, and nations became more nationalistic. European countries became deeply in debt, which made the U.S. the leading industrial power in the world. And lastly, inflation shot up in most countries. Tyler?
All right, thank you, Jaden.
You're welcome.
Now, World War I was a very tragic event. Many of the men who came back from the war were suffering from serious injuries.
Very sad.
I know. Very sad, very depressing time. The effects of the mustard gas and or shell shock. Some of the men fell to pieces because of the torment they went through and needed physiological help to recover from their experiences of war. Soldiers would have nightmares about their experiences and were not prepared for the torment. After the war, soldiers suffered from depression and financial difficulties. These were serious mental and emotional effects that impacted the soldiers the most.
No, nowadays is PTSD.
Thank you, Ben.
So, in World War One,
Now to interrupt that snooze fest, it is time for Silly Songs with Jaden, the part of the show where Jaden comes out and sings a silly song.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on that farm there was a chicken, E-I-E-I-O, with a cluck. And
All right.
alrighty.
Back
All
to
right.
Mitchell.
Alright, so in World War One, there were many key people to talk about and their role in the war itself. So we're going to be focusing up on three. The first one we're going to talk about is Gavrilo Princip. He was the suspect of the assassination of Mr. Ferdinand, which caused all these back and forth between Eastern and Western European countries, which started the war. Princip's intentions weren't planned so fast. Mr. Ferdinand was already a victim of an attempted assassination that day. He left that place and he took a wrong street trying to get to his destination. And what happened was he passed where Mr. Princip was at a bar, and Mr. Princip saw him and he knew instantly to kill him. So that's what he did. So once the assassination happened, the Austria-Hungary country blamed Serbia for the death, and then you had the blame game going all across Europe. Then our next person to talk about was the victim himself, Mr. Ferdinand, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was a member of the Imperial Habsburg dynasty and was assassinated by Mr. Princip on June 28, 1914. Archduke was that victim, and he was an imperialist, and the socialists, like Princip, did not like him. They wanted to kill people like Mr. Ferdinand. And then our last person we're going to talk about is Benito Mussolini. He was a former prime minister of Italy who was a socialist who helped Italy enter World War I. Mussolini was an Italian socialist during the 1910s when the Ferdinand assassination occurred. He helped push Italy into World War I, and he wanted victory badly. After the war in 1919, Mr. Mussolini founded the fascist movement, which led him away from socialism.
Yawn.
Well,
That
thank you,
was
Mitchell.
so
Thank you so much,
boring.
Mitchell.
Thank you, Mitchell. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And
Thank
we're
you.
not done.
We're not done yet.
For another
Ben,
snooze
because
fest.
time for your snooze fest.
Yeah.
For your snooze factor, Ben.
Mitchell, you can't say anything.
Why, Ben?
Wait, Tyler, you still recording?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, what also, citizens also got affected. The citizens had food shortages because the food went to the front line, and fed the soldiers. And what also happened is there were deadly influenza viruses, the deadly influenza that spread across the nation. Also, many were casualties in the war with bombing.
Yes.
To go into more detail about some citizens, if you were a soccer player, You could not join the war unless your team canceled your contract. And the soccer players were shamed about not going to war. Some people said that there's a time for games and a time for business, and they were considered cowardly for getting paid a lot of money while playing soccer, while others were fighting in the Western Front. And the football battalion was a group of amateur soccer players that played soccer against all the discrimination that they were facing.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
And
Thank
for
you.
that snooze factor.
Better than Mitchell.
Hey.
All right,
here's a
Jaden.
Snooze fest too.
All right, Jaden, please do the outro.
No,
you guys say. No, what you guys say?
What's the
Tequila.
outro?
And the elevator.
The Elevator Podcast. Thanks you for listening. Bye.